They told you love was sacrifice. That if it hurts, it's real. That if you're suffering, you're doing it right. That love is a battlefield, and your scars are proof you belong. But they lied, because love that demands your silence isn't love. Love that asks you to shrink isn't love. Love that thrives only when you endure it isn't love. It's bondage. It's a prison built from your own longing to be chosen. A cage lined with the velvet of your own denial. And the longer you stay, the more you forget what freedom ever felt like. You call it loyalty. You call it commitment. You call it love. But deep down, you know, what you're calling love is just your fear of being alone, dressed in the language of devotion. You've mistaken endurance for intimacy. You've confused suffering with connection. You've believed that if you just hold on tighter, if you just give more, if you just hurt longer, it will finally become love. But it won't. Because love that requires you to abandon yourself is not love. It's self-erasure. It's the slow death of your spirit in the name of someone else's comfort. It's the quiet agreement to disappear so someone else can feel whole. And that is not love. That is bondage. And you deserve to be free. Free to be seen. Free to be heard. Free to be loved. Without conditions. Without performance. Without pain as proof. Because real love doesn't ask you to endure it. It invites you to expand within it. It doesn't demand your silence. It cherishes your voice. It doesn't thrive on your suffering. It flourishes in your joy. So if you find yourself constantly enduring, constantly hurting, constantly shrinking in the name of love, it's time to ask, is this love or is this bondage? And if it's bondage, it's time to set yourself free, because you are not here to be caged. You are here to soar. You are here to be loved in your fullness, not in your fragments. You are here to be cherished, not endured. So break the chains. Walk away from the love that feels like bondage and walk towards the love that feels like freedom, because that is the love you deserve. That is the love that will set you free. And when you finally walk away from the aching, the apologizing, the begging to be seen in a space that was never built to honor your wholeness, something inside you exhales for the first time in years. That's not relief from leaving someone else. That's the relief of returning to yourself. Because endurance as a way of living isn't romantic. It's survival. And you weren't born just to survive love. You were born to breathe in it, to be known in it, to be reborn inside the kind of connection that doesn't require your suffering as currency. You were not put on this earth to walk on eggshells around someone else's fragility. You were not built to perform peace in a war you never started. You were not meant to become less so that someone else could feel like more. That's not love. That's a leash. And every time you choose to stay silent, stay small, stay obedient to someone else's emotional chaos, you tighten that leash around your own throat until the day you wake up and no longer recognize your reflection in the mirror. Not because you changed, but because you disappeared. Bit by bit, smile by smile, sacrifice by sacrifice, until all that's left is the version of you they approved of, while the real you waits behind locked ribs, screaming to be remembered. And I promise you, if love requires your erasure, if connection demands your silence, if safety means sacrificing your truth, then what you're clinging to is not a person. It's a pattern, a familiar wound dressed up as destiny. And it ends the moment you say, no more. No more enduring what doesn't see me. No more bending to earn breadcrumbs. No more mistaking pain for purpose. Because you are not here to survive someone else's inability to love you properly. You are here to be claimed by the kind of love that never asks you to bleed for it. And when you stop enduring, that's when it finds you. That's when you find you. And that is where the real story begins. Because freedom doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't roar through the door demanding applause. It comes quietly like a sunrise you almost missed because you were too used to the dark. It begins in the stillness after the storm, in the breath that doesn't tremble anymore. In the morning you wake up and don't feel the weight of pretending. You don't miss the chaos. You don't long for the apology they never gave. You don't ache for the love that only knew how to wound. Because now you remember who you are without the chains. And what you find isn't the version of you that begged to be chosen. You find the one who chooses themselves. You find the soul that doesn't trade its truth for temporary affection. The mind that doesn't contort to avoid being abandoned. The heart that no longer thinks it has to earn what should be given freely. You find power, not the kind that controls, but the kind that says yes to your own worth and no to anything that demands your suffering as proof. You stop asking, how can I make them stay? And you start asking, does this love make me stay true to myself? That's when you know you've healed. That's when you stop looking back. Because now, endurance is no longer your religion. Now, you live in alignment, not agony. You love in clarity, not confusion. And the ones who come now, they don't ask for silence. They don't shrink you. They don't turn your heart into a battlefield. They meet you where you are fully. And they love you there completely. No masks, no games, no bondage, just the steady, sacred rhythm of love that liberates, the kind that says, you don't have to endure me to keep me. You get to be you and be loved for it. That's what you were waiting for all along. And it was never outside you. It was a part of you you once abandoned, now finally coming home. And when that part of you comes home, the part that once whispered, this isn't love, in the silence between arguments, in the emptiness between apologies, in the ache that followed every sacrifice you were never thanked for. You don't run from it anymore. You sit with it. You listen to it. You honor it because it was never your weakness. It was your warning. It was your soul refusing to die quietly. It was the last ember of your truth, flickering in a storm you were never meant to endure. And now you fan that ember into flame. You let it burn away every lie that told you love must hurt, that devotion means disappearing, that the ones worth keeping are the ones who can't hold your truth. You let it burn through the illusions, the fantasies, the fairy tales built on control, codependence, and contracts disguised as chemistry. You let it burn through the myth that endurance makes you worthy. And you rise from the ashes of that lie, not harder, not colder, but clearer. Because now you know true love doesn't come to complete you. It comes to complement the self you never abandoned. It doesn't bind you to obligation. It invites you into freedom. It doesn't thrive in your suffering. It rejoices in your peace. And anything less than that is a cage, no matter how pretty the view. So you walk forward now, not as someone who's lost, but as someone who left, someone who walked away from bondage, not because you stopped loving, but because you finally started loving yourself more. And that choice, that clarity, that moment of sacred defiance against the chains dressed as love, that is the most powerful thing you'll ever do. Because when you stop enduring, you don't just change your story, you rewrite the ending. And that ending, it doesn't close with heartbreak. It closes with sovereignty. Not the kind that screams revenge or paints you as the victim, but the quiet, unshakable kind that says, I choose me. No fanfare, no dramatic exits, just a sacred return to your voice, to your truth, to your worth. Because the truth is, you were never hard to love. You were just trying to be loved by someone who didn't know what love really is. You were trying to pour life into a cup that had no bottom. And now you've set that cup down. You've stopped proving. You've stopped pleading. You've stopped surviving. You're living, unfolding, expanding, rooted in the knowing that the kind of love you deserve will never ask you to betray yourself to earn it. It will meet you in the open. It will see you without needing you to shrink. It will hold you without needing you to bleed. It will grow you without asking you to endure. Because love, real love, is not a test. It's a mirror. And in it, you don't see your suffering reflected back. You see your liberation. So the next time someone asks for your silence, your compromise, your soul in exchange for their closeness, you'll smile, you'll breathe, and you'll walk away. Not because you don't care, but because you finally do. Because love that requires endurance isn't love. It's bondage. And you were born to be free. Free to speak your truth even when it shakes. Free to walk away even when your heart still whispers. Free to honor your wholeness without needing permission from anyone to be complete. Because you've learned the difference now between connection and captivity, between sacrifice and self-erasure, between staying and settling. You no longer romanticize the ache. You no longer call pain your partner. You no longer worship the altar of almost love. And in that quiet power, that steady refusal to abandon yourself again, you begin to attract the extraordinary, not because you're searching, but because you've become a sanctuary, a soul so grounded in its own light that only those who can breathe in truth, who can love without conditions, who can stay without control, will ever find a place within you. And those who still confuse love with possession, who still mistake endurance for devotion, they'll pass by, and you let them go with grace, with clarity, with the calm knowing that you don't need to suffer to be loved. You only need to remember who you are, because the moment you choose freedom over fear, peace over patterns, truth over tolerance, you stop surviving love and you start becoming it, living it, radiating it, not the kind that cages, the kind that liberates. And that's not the end. That's the awakening. The awakening is quiet at first. It doesn't shout. It doesn't break down your door. It whispers in the space where anxiety used to live, in the stillness that follows the storm of heartbreak, in the breath you take that isn't weighed down by performance. It whispers, you're free now. And at first, that freedom feels unfamiliar, because for so long you called the cage your home. You wrapped barbed wire in language like loyalty, tied self-abandonment to phrases like ride or die, and swallowed your voice for so long, you forgot the sound of your own clarity. But freedom doesn't apologize. It doesn't shrink. It doesn't knock. It breaks open. It cracks your life at the fault lines you used to cover up with fake peace and forced smiles. It asks nothing of you except your truth. And slowly, you begin to build a new kind of love, not rooted in fear, but in fire, not in tolerance, but in transcendence. A love that doesn't need you to be less. A love that doesn't punish you for your boundaries. A love that doesn't test your worth with silence, indifference, or emotional ransom. This love, the one you're becoming, it's sacred. because it comes from you, from the pieces you reclaimed, from the voice you resurrected, from the soul that said enough and meant it. So let the old stories die. Let the version of you that thought pain was proof of love be buried. Let the chains you wore like medals fall at your feet, and walk forward, unchained, uncompromised, unapologetically you, because you don't belong to anyone who needs your suffering to feel safe. You don't belong in any place where your silence is the price of admission. You belong where your joy is welcome, where your truth is honored, where your freedom is non-negotiable. This is the new love, not one you chase, one you embody. Because when you become love, you never have to endure it again. And from this place, this grounded, luminous, unshakable place, you finally understand what you were calling love before was survival dressed in longing. What you were enduring was your own abandonment disguised as devotion. What you were clinging to was a reflection of your past wounds, not your present worth. But now you move differently. You speak like someone who no longer fears being too much. You walk like someone who's not afraid to be alone because you are full with your own presence. You love like someone who knows that love is not something you earn through suffering, but something you receive by never leaving yourself behind again. And when others see you, they'll feel it. They'll feel the sacred fire in you, the unshakable boundaries, the soft strength, the refusal to negotiate your value. And those who cannot meet you there, they won't stay. Let them go, because you are no longer here to prove, to fix, or to shrink. You are here to expand, to love without losing yourself, to stay open without staying in pain, to give freely, without ever bleeding for the unworthy. And when love does a reveal love, you will recognize it instantly. It won't ask you to chase. It won't demand your silence. It won't test you with distance or confusion. It will meet you fully, clearly, consistently, because you've already done the hardest thing. You've remembered who you are. You've broken the spell. You've named the lie. You walked out of bondage and into belonging, not to someone else, but to your own damn soul. And that is where the truest love begins, within, where it was waiting all along. And from within that place where your soul now stands, fully claimed, fully seen, fully sovereign, you no longer chase love. You attract it, not with performance, not with pain, but with presence. The kind of presence that doesn't flinch at loneliness, that doesn't bend to avoid rejection, that doesn't tolerate love that comes with fine print, because you've rewritten your script. Your story is no longer about waiting to be chosen. It's about choosing yourself again and again in every room, in every mirror, in every moment where the old version of you might have stayed silent just to be accepted. That version of you, the one who begged, who endured, who turned endurance into identity, is gone. Not with bitterness, with grace, because you finally understood. The greatest revolution is the return to self. Not the loudest, not the most dramatic, but the most liberating. You now hold space for a different kind of love. One that meets you where you already are. One that nourishes, not drains. One that inspires, not controls. One that invites you to grow, not shrink. And you recognize the difference now because you are different now. More whole, more clear, more dangerously alive in your own skin. Not everyone will know what to do with this version of you. And that's okay. Because the ones who do, the ones who see you and don't flinch, who love you and don't ask you to dim those, are your people. The rest, let them keep walking. You're not here to be worshipped in pieces. You're here to be met in wholeness. So keep walking forward. Keep choosing you. Keep honoring the love that never asks for your endurance but celebrates your liberation. Because the truth has set you free. And this time, you're never going back. Never going back to the smallness that once felt like safety. Never going back to the quiet desperation that wore the mask of patience. Never going back to apologizing for having needs, emotions, boundaries, fire. Because now, you don't just walk differently, you live differently. You no longer filter your love through fear. You no longer trade pieces of yourself to avoid abandonment. You no longer bow to relationships that mistake your softness for permission to wound you. You've outgrown that version of life. Now, love must meet you in truth or not at all. Because you've paid the price of endurance. You've sat in rooms where your silence screamed louder than your words ever could. You've stared into the eyes of people who loved your potential but feared your presence. You've swallowed yourself whole to keep someone else from leaving. And you still ended up alone. But that was the gift, wasn't it? Because in the ruins of that loss, you uncovered something far more sacred. You, unchained. You, uncensored. You, no longer asking for permission to be exactly as you are. And when you live from that place, when your love flows from a full cup, not a wounded hen, you don't fear being alone, because loneliness can't haunt a heart that is whole. And abandonment doesn't hurt the same when you never abandon yourself again. Now, you are home, within, finally. And from this home, love becomes a celebration, not a survival tactic. A mirror, not a mask. A dance, not a duty. And those who step into your life now, they're not drawn to what you can endure. They're drawn to your energy, to your peace, to your unapologetic existence. Because you've made it clear you will never again call bondage love. You will never again confuse endurance with worth. You will never again stay where you have to suffer to feel seen. You are no longer waiting for freedom. You are freedom. And the world, it changes around you when you live that truth. So now there is no going back, not to the chains, not to the silence, not to the kind of love that demanded your pain as proof. Because now you've seen it for what it is. Endurance is not love. Sacrifice is not intimacy. Loyalty without reciprocity is not devotion, it's self-destruction. And you are done destroying yourself just to be tolerated. You no longer confuse being chosen with being cherished. You no longer call suffering sacred. You no longer remain where your voice is unwelcome. Because the most radical thing you've ever done was not walking away from them. It was walking back to yourself, fully, finally, forever. And in that return, you became what they never expected. Whole, unafraid, uncompromising, unapologetically alive. You've closed the chapter on love that feels like bondage. And now, the only love you'll allow is the kind that feels like freedom.